Hi, and welcome to today's contribution, which is all about death. Death rules, okay? Or is it the other way around? Life rules, okay? Let's have a closer look. Out there in nature, in the wild, pain, suffering, and death comes about by many causes. There is disease, there is predation, there is habitat degradation, there are environmental disasters, there are accidents, there's heaps of stuff happening out there that can lead to the death of animals. And there's also fishing and hunting. Please note, fishing and hunting run in a different category, and the reason is animal rights. Animal rights philosophers insist that we are the same as all other animals. Yet at the same time, they claim that we are special, and for that reason, we must not kill animals, especially not by fishing or hunting. A fine example of such thinking is this one here. It's by a fishery scientist and the philosophers. Here is what they say, quote, "Wild fish naturally experience are the key words, note these. Wild fish naturally experience a variety of adverse conditions, from attack by predators or conspecifics to starvation or exposure to poor environmental conditions. This does not make it acceptable for humans to impose such conditions on fish," unquote. Now, I find that most extraordinary, because this elevates human beings to a super special status in nature. Somehow we are unnatural. When we go fishing, we are unnatural. We are an unnatural experience to fish. So that is what follows from their words. And consider the ultimate adverse condition for fish is, of course, death. And fishing, more often than not, brings about the death of fish. And I wonder, does it really matter to the fish if the ultimate adverse condition is brought about by, inverted commas, natural causes, or by unnatural causes, that is, us human beings? Be that as it may, all animal rights philosophies are adamant that we must stop hunting, fishing, and killing animals in general. It violates their rights, it produces pain and suffering in the process, it ends, in the case of fish, a potentially happy and fulfilled fish life. Killing animals is not compatible with universal compassion, and in the end it's the ultimate harm, or all of these things together. So that's animal rights in a nutshell for you. Now, so far so good. I have accepted up to this point that death is, the general sense of death, which is there is something final about death, the finality of death. But let's have a closer look at what death actually means. On a fundamental level, death is just a rearrangement of atoms and molecules and a modification of the function of cells. That's all there is to it. And it seems to be fairly long term, but it is not a state, but it is a process. And that process is the rearranging of these atoms and molecules and cells, and the process is re-entering nature, ecosystems, and they're combining to produce new life. It's a process. It's an ongoing business. Death is an ongoing business. A seriously interesting observation in this ongoing business about death is that life at some stage had to invent death in order to perpetuate itself. Life had to start devouring itself in order to stay alive. On that fundamental level, death is the same for all animals, for human beings, and for all organisms, even for matter, if there is a death for matter. But does it mean the same to all the candidates here? That is, human beings, animals, organisms, and matter. Let's start with the obvious candidate, fish. Are they aware of their own mortality? And do they, for example, grieve for a fellow fish that passed away, or rather got gulped away by a bigger fish? And do fish ponder on stuff like that? I doubt it very much, and I doubt that many other animals do. Sure enough, some domestic and wild animals miss their companion when passed away, but that doesn't mean they conceptualize or understand death. Do we humans understand death? You're witnessing somebody who struggles with the question, but we are certainly aware of our own mortality and trying to make sense of it. Fish and other animals are not given to such human speculations. Fish and animals do not fear death, but they try everything to avoid it in order to pass on life, to pass on their genes. Their instincts are geared towards procreation, whatever the cost. And the cost of life can be immediate death, like in the sexual cannibalism of spiders or some spiders, and the successful spawning of salmon. Back to our animal rights friends. Animal rights philosophers cultivate pain, suffering, and death as pivotal to all things human and nature. They promote a death-centered view of life. They elevate negativity to an irrational level because they make human pain, suffering, and death the law of all nature. But we were never the law of all nature, and we probably will never be. But the practical reason and use of that negativity, of this death-centered view on life, is to gaslight people into feeling bad and guilty about what they eat, and making them feel bad and guilty about hunting, fishing, and many other things on top. And all of that leads to completely misguided and ideologically charged animal rights and animal welfare laws. A more natural and animal and human friendly way to look at things is a life-centered view on death. Such a life-centered view accepts the facts of life and evolution. A life-centered view accepts that death is integral part of the process of life, and the life-centered view allows for the killing of animals, like in fishing, hunting, or food production. Of course, terms and conditions apply, but that is another story. Let me sketch now the essential differences between a death-centered view on life and a life-centered view on death. So here they are. Death-centered view on life tied to animal rights, and the life-centered view on death not tied to any particular philosophy. Animal rights bemoans our existence. We live in a vale of tears. There is only pain, suffering, and death, and no end in sight. Life-centered views, on the other hand, accept the facts of life. They accept that there is pain, suffering, death, but they also accept that where something can be done about it, something will be done about it. Animal rights promote isolation. They want us to isolate from nature. Life-centered view, on the other hand, encourage participation. After all, we're part of nature. We're not unnatural or extraterrestrials. Animal rights loves bans. They love their bans. They want to ban everything left, right, and center. The more, the better. Life-centered views, on the other hand, prefer freedoms. Animal rights loves dictates. They love to tell you what you have to think, what you have to do, and what you have to eat. Life-centered views prefer choices. All in all, animal rights produces alienation, whereas life-centered views encourage our belonging to nature. So, what's the conclusion of all this? As I have pointed out in other contributions, animal rights philosophies are deeply, deeply pessimistic and misanthropic. And on top of that, their death-centered views on life are absolutely, absolutely incompatible with conservation or any other meaningful environmental policy. Life-centered views on death, on the other hand, are animal-friendly, human-friendly, and they are fundamentally optimistic in outlook. And life-centered views on death are in fact the basis of conservation and all meaningful environmental policies. So, all of that leaves only one conclusion. Life rules. Okay? That's all for today. See you soon. Cheers.